Okay, what's up, y'all? I wanted to get back to doing some more melodic tutorials. So for this one, I have like a Jersey House slash Dariacore, somewhere in between those two genres. Little beat that I'm gonna break down. So I'll go ahead and play that so you know what you're getting into.
I really know what's inside of me, and it was never enough. There's not a red rose side of me. Now I'm so lost, I'll never learn again. Spend my life sucking up through the foreign and before. Pull up in the truck on me, yeah. Thinking about all the bands I'm yet to make it. I was looking for you in the crowd, tipped out. I'ma put the shit on play with or without you. Without you, without you. Do I give a shit about you? Fucking little bitch, I'm gonna devour you. Pull up in the truck on me. 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 Thinking about all the bands I'm yet to make it. I was up in the truck on me. Pull up in the truck on me. I was up in the truck on me. Pull up in the truck on me. I was up in the truck on me. Pull up in the truck on me. I was looking for you in the crowd, tipped out. I'ma put the shit on play with or without you.
So to go ahead and start this one out with the vocals, I will say I just did a tutorial on how to get your vocal tracks synced up with your DAW tempo wise. If you need to figure out how to do that, go check out the first link in the description. It'll be that video, and I actually did the tutorial with these two vocals. So for the vocal processing here, I basically I've routed both of my different vocal channels into the same vocal mix channel, and then I just have a couple of effects, a high pass that's cutting the lows out of the break-ins.
I really know what's inside of me, and it was never enough.
Through same thing with the Dane vocal, I'm pretty sure.
Pull up in the truck.
And I will I'll get to the vocal effects parts of those. So all you need to know for those two is that they are both being bussed into this vocal mix, which helps when I have both the vocals playing at the same time, like right here.
Thinking about all the bands I'm yet to make it.
It kind of helps to just glue both the vocals together and not have one be more prevalent than the other, and also not get like too much volume going on there, so it just keeps the dynamics in check for the whole track, helps the mix go easier. From there, let's move into the first part, which is the guitar part. So this one I called Electric Bleed, and it sounds like this. So this is a flex patch. I use the Pignose Quarter Gain 2. With these settings right here, I turn the delay and the reverb off like I usually do, just to be able to do that on my own in the post effects. I'm cutting the lows out of it, boosting the mids a little bit down on the highs, and then the cabinet and distance, these two work together to like simulate an amplifier, so like a really small reverb. And then the pickup is turned up, which gives it like a twangier sound, I think. It's like what the knob on the guitar does. I'm not sure on that, but I think that's what that is. But what I really think makes this guitar work is just the composition for it. So I think it sounds a little more complex than it is. If I go in here and just remove all these leading notes, what it really ends up being is just a pretty simple chord strumming progression that just has a couple of glides towards the end of it. So this is really all it is right here. It's like this little G. I'm not going to name the chords, but you know, this G chord, this G inversion right here, this regular G, whatever this is, you know. And so one of the tricks that I just learned is you can control space to pause it in a certain spot and not have it start at the beginning. So now we're going to be starting here. And as you can see, just like once we get through the first half of these, we get a bend. And you can do this by like changing. Well, I'll go ahead and play it first and then I'll show you. Right, so it's basically just those four chords except for these two bends come in. Now, one of the things is I've changed the MIDI color here to be just a different MIDI color. And the reason for that is if this bend, which is done using the slide note, is the same color as the rest of the chord, it's going to bend all those notes. Right, so as you can see here, it's bending the bottom 2 notes up too, and that's not what we want. I just really want it to bend this top note down. So I've changed the MIDI color to 12. Now it's only going to be bending that C down. And I feel like that just adds a ton to it. So then once we bring these back in, we kind of just have... As you can see, this repeats right here. You know, it goes... And then this is kind of like 2 different sets of flourishes that we have going on. Right? The BG repeats on the first set. Bringing in a lower note tends to help with this, and then I have another bend right there. And I'm just going to kind of skip to the end now to show what the resolution sounds like. And so we're ending it on the same G that we start with, which helps it resolve better. I really am not a music theory expert, like I think I already mentioned, but like these top notes right here of each of the chords are my loudest notes. I've changed the velocity on those to help them stand out some. And also the bending ones, or not the bending ones, but these bending ones are also louder. So just the composition on that, I think, is what makes it stand out. And I have a couple different variations that I wrote on this. I think this is the first one that I wrote, and it is pretty basically like... just like a jammier version with a couple more notes. I think it's literally just these notes thrown in to like bounce back and forth, right? And then, of course, the chords aren't held, which like holding the chords helps, you know, holding these notes out helps it to sound more like a strum and less like a finger picky or sliding guitar motion. So I don't use that in this, but I just figured that's worth showing. So then the processing on that, super simple stuff. It's just a high pass, and I'm cutting a pretty decent amount out of this, right? It just helps once we get some bass elements going in the track. To not have the bass and the sub, or not the sub, but the bass and the mid, like lower mid range of the vocals fighting with this. It just helps it to be bright and like stand out in that sense. So then after that, I just put a compressor on it to kind of glue it together after I've kind of changed the frequencies that are represented in there. I just wanted to glue the higher frequencies together a little bit. Then I just added a little bit of distortion, bit crushing, and like a space for it, which is reverb. So I'll kind of solo these in so you can get an idea what they sound like. Right, so as you can kind of hear there, this one brings in some weight that's nice, some warmth. This one brings in some crispness, and this one puts it in like a shimmery space. So I'm going to do that one more time so you get an idea of what... So weight, warmth, right? Weight and warmth. Crispness. And then the pretty obvious space there. So I think that's probably a good explanation of that. All right, so now I'll just kind of play this all together so we can move forward. Right, so I'm starting with the vocals and the guitar only. So then I switch from the break-ins vocal to the Dane vocal, and I will start with the drums here because they're pretty simple. I'm going to do a separate tutorial on Slice X. I have a much better example of Slice X, so this one I'll just say I'm doing like a little hat pattern here. Right, nice, simple. I just basically put some breaks into a Slice X, and then I'm sending them probably into a high-pass filter, yeah. So just using some hats that were nice and easy to pull. That's going with the clap. The clap's volume's fading in. That's what this automation is. And sometimes I'll low pass it in, but for this occasion, I felt like it worked better to just kind of fade the volume in. And then we're bringing in some sub and like house plucky elements. So
Pull up in the truck on me, yeah. Thinking about the bands I'm yet to make it. I was looking for you in the crowd, tipped out. I'ma put the shit on play with.
and as you can see, each at the end of each little 2-beat section, I have one of the break-ins in love vocal, you know, kind of flourishes in there.
But without you, without you, without you, do I give a shit about you? Fuck it.
So there was this one like really obvious part that he uses as a backing element. That's like by itself in the track, and he uses it to behind the instrumental as like a little flowy bit. So I just kind of scanned through using the slip tool, which is this little dual arrow, you know, to find a little piece that worked. And this was the piece that worked. So
Bands I'm yet to make it. I was looking.
then we're also bringing in 2 different melodic elements. So I have this Happer's pluck. And this one, there's not too much to be said about it. It is a sample that I used. I made this for the Four Wholesome Horsemen EP. And it's just like a little mid-bass pluck. And then I'm taking that and sending it, I think, into really, really, really simple processing. Yeah, so I send it into an isotope imager to give it some width, I think. Yeah. So that's with the imager. That's without it. So if you have headphones, you can hear it's just giving it some width, and then just cutting that really hard transient off of it. It's still pretty thunky, but it just takes a little bit from it. So that's at full strength and just comes in working its full magic right there. So if we had this little sub. So this little sub sweep, it's a high pass going downwards, and you can kind of see there's not a lot of sub, and then slowly it fades in, and then once we get to the end, bunch of subs. So, and this one is a little bit more complex. It's still, I believe, a sample usage. So yeah, it is this pretty big, heavy, like stompy sub bass that I use sometimes. It's like a respace / noise 808. And so I'm doing quite a bit to it though. So with no effects, it sounds like that, which means that I've probably done some shaping to start this. Yeah. So I have an envelope, a volume envelope, and a sustain, and it's just kind of like a little bit of decay, right? So the sustain's at about halfway. It makes it be that little like thumpy sound. And then I'm also pulling a low pass filter down over it, and I don't modulate that. So then I send that into a destructor. As you can see, it's getting some width from that. And that comes from this blues speaker. And then I'm sending it into a pretty heavy distortion with like a filter cut on it. So, right, it just lets the low end shine a little more. Then I have another low pass cutting a bunch more out. Then a kilohertz stereo that's probably boosting the width. Yep. So then I have this low cut filter that's kind of fading in. And it starts really quiet, but then I have an OTT after that to bring the volume up. And as you can see, I'm boosting the mids, boosting the lows, cutting the highs on the OTT. The time's really short, so. As it fades in, that low frequency gets represented. And then I just cut the ringy highs out of it. So that functions as like my little thumpy sub. Then I'm not going to talk about this pretty much at all, but if any people are interested in riser tutorials, just let me know, because I made that riser. I think risers are really fun, and like falls and lifters and all that stuff is like a fun thing to know how to make, but I just don't feel like it's the most clickable content, so I'm not going to spend time doing that unless people are just really avidly looking for it. So let me know in the comments if you want to see some of that. So then we get to the end here. Without you, do I give a shit about you? Fucking little bitch, I'm gonna devour you. And so as you can see, like basically I bring this electric guitar back in, and I've been trying to get into a battery. So I'll just say I cut out everything except for there's like a little reverb fall off of this, right? So that happens. Then I cut all my elements out. I solo in this Dane vocal. Or no, I don't. So I actually I bring the break-ins vocal in, and I'll talk about what's going on with these. Just know it's the same thing that happens here with an EQ change. So I'm going to talk about it once I get to here. But as you can see, as you can probably hear, the break-ins vocal like swirls a bit. And if you need any help noticing that, you hear how it kind of like rotates around. We'll talk about that later because I do a different version of it up here, and I don't want to talk about it twice. Just know that I switch to the break-ins vocal, do that little vocal swirl using ring modulation, and then solo out this guitar. And really quickly and easily, I've just took this and dragged it, and it's one of those. And that's something that I've been trying to get better at, using the same parts of my track over and over again, because I used to be, you know, a big believer in like every piece needs to be made specifically for like that part of the track, and you shouldn't be reusing stuff, and you need to like learn how to do it right. And it's just, I feel like that's nonsense now. Like good tracks that I've heard, they know how to use motif and like the same little elements over and over again, repeat stuff. Makes it not only makes your music stronger, but it makes you a better producer, because you're just going to work faster and like know what's necessary versus what's like you think you need it to like be cool or whatever. So I'll play the whole thing together, and then we'll break a couple different pieces out of it.
Pull up and truck on me. 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 Taking power to the bands I'm yet to make it.
Okay, so starting with the vocal here, we got the old pull up in this truck.
Pull up and truck on me.
And then I just repeat that a bunch of times, except for when I do it the last time.
Pull up and truck on me. Taking power to the bands I'm yet to make it.
I do have that little rest where it's normally resting at, but then I just cut this. So I kind of like went in here, cut this space where the normal rest was. That's the same as this. And then this is just the next part of the vocal, except cutting out a piece of it. So then the drums really simply are just a kick and then two different hats. So that goes on. Claps on the 2s and 4s, and then two different little hats there.
Pull up and truck on me. Pull up and truck on me.
So then I think I just skip a kick every like 8 bars or so.
Pull up and truck on me. Pull up and truck.
Do leave the clap in there, and then at the end of this,
Pull up and truck on me.
cut all the drums out and have this little hat setup happen.
Taking power to the bands I'm yet to make it.
Right, soloing. Then also with the hat setup, I do have like some little glitchy layers that I actually got out of my pad pack thing, the pad sample pack that I just released. Yeah, and that's just like an EQ'd piece of that. Helps the hats. Nice. All right. So then as far as my instrumentation goes, all of my stuff, except for a couple little effect swirls, is in this purple Electrice house section thing. And I've split it apart down here, so we'll kind of come down here to get a little better view of it. So I have this main bass that's a couple different sounds added together, then the house sound from the beginning, except with an added low mid layer, then a little like bloopy counter melody type deal. And then the guitar, which I have rendered up top, so just a little guitar run to like act as a fill there. So then when they're all together, this will kind of probably give a better idea of what it sounds like. Right, and that guitar fill, actually, let me play it with that. Right, as you can see, it kind of runs up into the next note there. I'm not gonna make this a super long tutorial. I'll just show a little of the sound design here. So I guess as you probably noticed, the pattern goes the dirtier bass with the little synthy layer, wobbly layer that goes with it, and then a bending lead, right? So it goes dirty bass on the 1, little bending lead on the 2, and then another one on the 1, and then another one on whatever that is. And then it goes like dun 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 dun. I'm making a Mortal Kombat sound with my mouth, but like dun 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 dun. It's kind of like that. So again, it's like a repeating pattern that we have going on here. Right, and as you can see, like this resolves after this, so this little thing is set into resolution. It's like the response off of that little run that I have happen. And they all just kind of work together. Now I will say, since I'm thinking about it, and I probably will forget this if I don't, I also, before those parts happen, I have like a little swirled effects thing, and that is just basically, I'm going to spend 2 seconds on this. Another thing from the granular pad pack that I actually released a while ago, or like two tutorials ago. And so the way that I did this, there's a bunch of effects on it, so I'm gonna like breeze through them. So as you can see, the first effect is to just bring it into the center, right? It's a imager that's pulled down to 0, then a fruity send after that. That's just fading the volume in. And all of these little sections are a little different, so I'll kind of play them all first, right? So I have that, this, right? Just a couple different sounds to like make a different, unique feel out of each. So then I have the ring mod, and the ring mod is doing a trick that I use like 4 different times in this little track. But so this is my send, this is my volume. This is my ring modulation frequency, so if I go in here, you'll see that it kind of fades down. And as you can see here, that takes the mono signal and swirls it, because the spread is turned on. No spread just gives it like a rolling volume. That gives it some spread, which makes it go left, right, left, right. Same thing there. Same thing there. I don't even think I changed anything on that. Then I just have two different fade-ins that I do with an EQ. One is like a little sharper that goes a little higher. Then for this like super bright one, I just fade it in a little less quickly and like end a little lower. Then I have a compressor just slamming it down. And then another EQ cutting some of the mids and lows out. Then a reverb, which makes it sound like this. So that's all of the stuff together. So I say all that to say that each of those little sections like leads into the whoopy little lead there. So just a lot of like elements playing off of each other. So now to go through the sound design for this, it's going to be quite a bit of sound design, but once we do this, we will not have to talk sound design anymore, because I think the rest of this is using old sound design. Yeah, so I'm gonna just blast through these, guys and girls. If there's any girls watching this, it's I look at the analytics, it's mostly dudes, and I'm good with that. You know, solidarity, bros. It's just us out there. It's a bunch of dudes making weird house music. That's pretty much the deal. If there is any chicks, what up? What up, girl? What your name is? And so to go through the sound design for this, I'm really just going to talk about what each of the sounds are doing, because we have 4 different sounds that make this up. This is another 3 sounds. This is another 1 sound. And then this is the guitar that I already showed. I'm not going to do a run. If I do a run through of 4, 7, 9 patches, this is going to be an hour-long tutorial. I'm just going to talk about how they're working together. So this first layer is this, which is 4 patches. It is kind of like a hard style bass that we have here. So I'll just run through the quick main things. We have 2 different pitch drops. These 2 do the pitch dropping that happens in the matrix here. That's no pitch drop. We add the first one, sharp plunkiness, right? Sharp plunkiness. Then secondly, this one's adding like a longer pitch drop, but not a sharpness. Then we add them both. We have a sharpness and a longness. Then just to single these out one at a time, I have some noise being modulated by that. Then this oscillator A is the crunchiness. Oscillator B is the body, the sub, the weight. That's the first patch. And then the second patch, and these both are like the yellow layer. This is just like a saw mid layer, and I kind of did a bunch of finessing to get it to be bright, but also not taking up the space of the third and fourth layer. Because then the next two layers are kind of filling up this mid area. So this, I wanted to be stronger in the highs and not taking up and filling too much mid space. So what I'm doing here is it's just a detuned saw. Filter fades in. There's also a pitch drop on this. And again, the pitch dropping happens in here. These two layer together. Let me kind of solo that out. Right, to give this nice subby, but also a little spacious mixture. Then I'll just show this because I did try and explain all these patches and I got bogged down in technical stuff. I will just say it's kind of funny for my saw patch here. I send it through an EQ here, right? So this first EQ, I'm boosting the highs, cutting the mids a little bit, distortion, compression. Then I send it through another EQ where I'm cutting the highs out completely and cutting the mids and cutting the lows. Then I send it through an OTT where I once again boost the highs and cut the like mid highs. So what must have happened there would be I made the patch. And then I was like, okay, it needs to be a little brighter. So I like added this EQ onto it. And then I played it in the context probably with the guitars at the end and was like, oh, it's overpowering the guitars. Let me cut all that highness out. And then went back and was like, I could use a little more. So it's just one of those things where like when you're mixing, you don't always have to like go through and make sure you get it all right with one EQ. You can use as many as you need to. So then my last two patches, I have like a body patch here, which is, these are both centered. I do have a distortion comb that's moving, and then basically this is at 16th triplet rate. It's doing the fine tuning of both oscillators, the filter cutoff and the filter variance. That's what the filter sounds like when it's fully on. That's when it's not. It's at mid, and it's also panned fully to the right. So just giving it some strange phasiness to that. So then I send it through a compressor. So it's kind of like a basically kind of mid-heavy thing. Boost, cutting the highs, doing some wave shaping, doing some stuff to it. So the way that works with my other sound here is I have yet again another width layer. So those two work together to make like a lead sound that layers with my bass stompy sound, and I only use that in this first half here because we use that patch. The yellow patches get reused. The teal patches are just in this section. Right, so we have that. Now moving on to my house bop is what I've called this. I've already showed two of these patches. So the last one is this Middlesex patch. So as you can see, it's just kind of like a square bass pluck, right? And that's just done using one volume. So the volume stays loud. Then the filter is cutting down as it goes. And it looks like there's also some noise. So some noise, filter, pluck, and then some tape saturation. And it goes super basically. Okay, so the next thing is all three of these patches thinned into a room tone, which is just a fancy word for a little reverb room. So if I solo it out, that's what just the reverb sounds like. As you can see, it's just a little wet, kind of short decay, larger room size of all those going in there. The room tone is then sent into the mix. So let me kind of show what it sounds like with and without it. So that's my house pluck with the room tone, and then this is it without it. As you can see, it's a lot drier. The room tone also adds some darkness to it. It's nice, some warmth to the mid low end. Usually people, when they're talking about warmth, it's like a low mid frequency thing. So then lastly, I have this bending pluck right here. It is a couple different things. So it just looks like it's going envelope 1 is my amplitude modulation, but it's also hitting a filter. Voicing is on mono, so it can bend between notes. It always bends. So if I play one and then another one 20 seconds later, it bends between them. It's really fast bending, but that would be if it was really slow bending. So then this is a patch that I put a good amount of work into. And it's just basically a sine wave within like a coloring oscillator, and then like your basic, man, it sounds kind of identical from both of them, but I'm sure with no effects it wouldn't sound so much identical. So then we have distortion chorus, blah 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 blah. I'm gonna kind of skip through this. This isn't being used, this isn't being used. So just a couple like width effects, right? Some distortion. That's what's making it sound samey. An OTT. Yeah, Pro Q3. Kind of giving it like the same shape as that guitar EQ that I have. Another compressor. So I'll just kind of keep playing it, and we'll get into the next part.
Pull up in the truck on me. 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 Taking power to the Benz, I'm yet to make it.
So I cut all the parts out. Switch the vocal up.
Pull up and taking power to the Benz, I'm yet to make it. I was love.
And then I actually drag out that part that right there. As you can hear, there's like a switch.
I was up in the truck on me.
Where I'm not using the correct part of the vocal.
Pull up in the truck on me. I was up in the truck on me.
Right, and then I have this backing vocal that comes in.
Pull up in the truck on me. I was up in the truck on me.
And you can't hear that part of the Dane vocal.
Pull up in the truck on.
That sounds all like clippy.
I was up in the truck on me.
Because it happens.
I was up in the truck all night.
On the sidechain, which makes it sound like she's saying, "I was up in this truck all night." I don't know. I thought it was a very cool little effect. Before we get to that though, before we do all that, I do have a little bass layer that happens. Again, coming from this array splatter. I took it, pitched it in the same pitch as the track, and then I just filter it up with a low pass. And so that's kind of just to like have another house bass layer that works with this.
Taking power to the Benz, I'm yet to make it. I was up in
So without it,
taking power to the Benz, I'm yet to make it. I was up.
It may have a little more impact by cutting that out, but I just felt like that was really fun to have that like little bouncy variation to the bass.
I was up in the truck on me. Pull up in the truck on me. I was up in the truck on me. Pull up in the truck on me. I was up in the truck on me. Pull up in the truck on me. I was looking for you in the crowd tipped out.
Right, so we repeat some of the same ideas again. So I go in here and I use another part of the vocal again. I'm using backers again. I do have a little vocal switch that I use right here.
Truck on me. I was
And so that's just basically a little piece of the vocal that I cut out, and I was like, oh, it's in my ear. I'm hearing it say that all night repeats. And so I just changed the stretch mode on this and then moved the formants around. And that's just a good way to get like a fresh feel into it. I guess I'll talk drums wise. We have new hats coming in. So
I was up in the truck on me.
Right here we are doing a little double stutter. Right, the first half we were just right hats on beat. Now we have and that just helps to work with the rhythm that we have going in the melodic part. So if we compare these, the main difference is this one goes a lot more of the electrice. Actually, I can come down here and show you a lot clearer. So I'm going to keep these. Actually, I guess I'll turn them on. So as you can see here, first half, we have, this is my like grungy, wobbly, whatever layer. This one is much more house bop centric. This one is a lot more grunge centric. And then there's less of the raveler, that little bendy synth. So A being, that's my first part of my first section. Very, very similar, but slightly different. Right, so I don't really have to go over much there. That's kind of been covered. So kind of keeping it rolling here, I'll start from right here.
Pull up in the truck on me. I was up in the truck on me. Pull up in the truck on me. I was looking for you in the crowd, dipped out. I'ma put the shit I play with always without you.
Okay, so let's talk about this little mid fill right here, or whatever you would call this. The switch. So I have this little riser that I made for my song Ex Machina. I've reversed it. The original sound was like that, and I wanted it to be a very specific length. So I wanted this part right here. I wanted from this hit to the end to be exactly this length. And there's a nice easy way to do that, and that is you would trim your piece of the audio where you want it to be changed at. So like right here, you would go in and cut this. So this is the spot where I want it to start. I can go and then set it right here and then change my mode to stretch and then stretch it to the exact length that I want, which is going to end me with the front length being whatever length it ends up being. Which is strangely like the exact length of that. I don't know. I didn't know that was going to happen. But basically what that keeps me from doing is like having this like this and like trying to get it to stretch right. It's just like a difficult process that can be done pretty easily if you just follow those quick steps. So I have that. I mix it with this car crash. Right, it's like a car crash that I've just cut two different ones together. So this one is a screeching stop that runs into this like longer thing that I've just cut two clips out of it to where it feels like there's like a little tire hubcap spinning off at like the exact BPM of the song, if that makes sense. So then I also have like a little reversed sub that is made up of the same reverse twice, right? So it's just like a reverse kick that I've sent into another. I have another reverse kick that's identical, just the forward version of it, that I'm then sending through a convolver. So it's like a dry, it's not like a reverse kick through a reverb. It's a dry reverse kick that runs into like a reverberating forward version of that kick. So it's cleaner. If you send them both through the reverb, it gets a little messier. And you don't hear the second kick as much, like the transient's a little weaker. So yeah, it's really subtle, but you can kind of tell the difference. So then I have lastly this little filter fall. That just is like a nice little digital sweep. So all those come together to blend while the break-ins vocal fades in. Then lastly, I will finally explain how I'm doing the vocal swirls. If you remember from the earlier part with the green little glitch fills, it's the same principle as that. So sending them into a ring modulator that the mix turns up. So if it's all the way up, it's going to be super swirly. I guess I'll have to turn the vocals back on so I can actually hear this. So if I bring my ring modulation all the way on, it's just so swirly. Right? That's a little too digital sounding for me. So by like fading in the mix, it kind of like helps it fade in and sweep in. I could also like have this a little higher, but not all the way up. That's just like a subtler way to do it, I would say. I might change that in the final version of the track. And then I have this thing that I call an EQ bail. And all that is an EQ that just fades in slowly to kind of So then to end this song, I have another new version of this. Like a little bit more of a stompy hardstyle pattern that I'm doing with some trappier drums. Got a really nice little Dariacore snare in there, and that is made of a little hyper poppy type trill snare that I had with like just the most digital piece of percussion that I made in Serum really quick. I'm not going to show how I did that, but I'll probably do a tutorial on that soon. I don't have any of the lead stuff, right? Like I don't have any of the like little wobbly lead, as you can hear. It's just the bass. It's just these two. Just those two layers playing with this guitar. And then lastly, the vocal, of course. Kind of like sad cowboy hard style. And so that's going to do it for this one, y'all. Thank you for watching, and I will see y'all in the next one.